Okay, so to continue our coverage over the Dawn of X era of X-Men comics, we do pick up with Cable number 2, 3, and 4. Now, with that being said, with the opening pages of Cable number 2, we do pick up with a couple right now arguing about the idea of them going over to COPPA. And the reason why, because they're afraid that there is a possibility that island could be wiped out. And that right there is a good reason why they should be scared, because this will be like the third or fourth time the X-Men and the mutant race had formed some kind of island away from the American government as a way to protect themselves. And then at the end, the island does get wiped out. And so they do have some good concerns right now. But either way, while the couple was talking to one another, they then realized that their baby has been kidnapped. And the question is now, who kidnapped their baby and why did they kidnap their baby? But then we pick up with Cable, who we see right now has gone over to the nearby police station, who is right now working on the case to figure out who in the world did kidnap the baby. Now, of course, this is Cable really trying to say, I should be involved. I should be helping you guys out because the baby is a mutant. And so you need to let me help you because I hate the idea that a mutant baby was kidnapped. And of course, you do have the police officers tell him no, because you're not police. This is our city. We're going to take care of this problem. We have no issues in looking to find out why in the world a baby was taken, even if the baby is a mutant. We don't care about that. We're going to try to find that baby, but you cannot be involved in this case at all because you do not have any rights to jump into this case. Now, we do jump over to Cable, who's right now outside the home where the baby was kidnapped from. Now, he did bring one of the Stepher Cuckoos with him, Esme. Now, if you're wondering what in the world is a Stepher Cuckoo, well, let me explain. So basically, a long time ago, you had a Weapon Plus program, and Weapon Plus was a big program that had different projects going on. Wolverine was actually one of those projects. Weapon 10, Weapon X. Now, after him, there were a few more. One of those projects were actually Emma Frost, where they had taken some ovaries out of Emma Frost's body as a way to produce daughter/clones of her, to basically use her daughter/clones of her to kill all mutants across the world. Now, that project was stopped. Luckily, Emma Frost was able to save her daughters/clones before they had the ability to wipe out all mutants across the world. And right now, Cable has brought one of them with him to see if she can use her psychic powers to figure out if anyone has an idea what in the world happened to the baby. Who knows anything that can tell them who would try to kidnap a baby from a home just like that? Now, we do get reminded that basically when it comes to the Stepher Cuckoos, they do have this weird kind of relationship with Cable, where basically Cable is dating all four sisters at the same time, and they take turns on each day. So for one day it's one sister, the next day it's another sister. It just changes every single day, which is very interesting and very strange for this series. But getting back into the main story, that is the moment you have Esme tell Cable that one of the neighbors or one set of neighbors were acting weird, because she says they were home and then out of nowhere they weren't. And of course, they only disappeared right when the baby was kidnapped. And then you have her say and tell Cable they do have some connections to the Order of the X. Now remember, the Order of the X has been seen a lot of times in our coverage over the Dawn of X. But basically, the Order of X is just a cult that worship mutants like no other. And of course, that makes sense if they have kidnapped a baby, because again, they praise mutants so much, they basically kidnapped a baby for some strange reason. Now, while you have Cable and Esme going inside the house to hopefully find some kind of clues that can help them figure out what happened to the baby, this is the moment we actually pick up where our last video left off at. Because remember, in our last video, Cable found some kind of sword, and that sword name was the Light of Gladiator. Now, of course, when he grabbed the sword, it activated, but when it did activate, it woke up 3 robot knights on a different planet who apparently has some kind of connection to the sword, and they called the sword the greatest weapon from their home world. And so, of course, while Cable and Esme are looking around for some clues to hopefully give them an idea where the baby was taken to, that is the moment they're attacked by those robot knights who came here for the sword that Cable found in the last video. Now, while you have Cable and Esme working together to fight against these robots, that is the moment you have Esme tell us that these robots are not your usual kind of robots. And she says these robots have brains. And that right there makes the whole story very interesting. Because at first, the only thing we knew about these guys, that they were basically robots and they were being kept in some kind of museum on a different planet. And here they are now coming to Earth, and come to find out they're not robots. There is a possibility that they were once your regular kind of people who were then turned into robots. But either way, though, it does lead into a big battle, but it ends with Cable and Esme losing and being taken in as hostages, because these space knights now want to know how in the world Cable was able to get his hands on their greatest weapon of all time. Now, we do pick up with Cyclops. This makes sense because Cyclops is the father of Cable. But either way, though, you do have Cyclops right now going to the same police station because he's doing what his son did earlier, which is telling the police officers if they need any kind of help with this case, they'll be glad to help out. Because again, the baby that was kidnapped was a mutant baby. But of course, you do have the police officers tell Cyclops the same thing they told Cable. You have no right to be in this case at all. You cannot help us at all. This is our case. This is our city. I'm sorry that you guys want to help out, but of course you cannot help out. And they do leave. But then you have Cyclops realize that those men were talking about his son. And he's kind of like, of course my son is already here trying to figure out what in the world happened here in the first place. But right after Cyclops had that conversation with the police officers, he does go back home and he does try to eat a nice good old sandwich for lunch. But of course, that is the moment he is confronted by Emma Frost. Now, let's not forget, there was the point Cyclops did date Emma Frost. He was no longer dating Jean Grey for a lot of different reasons, but he was dating Emma Frost back in the early 2000s. But of course, they're no longer dating. But either way, this is Emma Frost coming to Cyclops as a mother, a concerned mother, because Cyclops, his son Cable, is dating all of her daughters, especially Esme, the one daughter she cares for the most, the one she thinks is more fragile than the others. And she tells Cyclops to make sure that his son treats his daughters, or not his daughters, sorry, her daughters, like the way they should be treated. And then she leaves. Now, we do jump to a different time period, and the reason why, because we pick up with old school Cable. Now, when I say old school Cable, what I mean is back in the 80s and 90s, we had this older Cable who would just come in out of nowhere to help the X-Men out. Now, back in 2016, 2017, the younger Cable that we were following earlier in this series, he had killed off the older Cable because the older Cable had played around with the time stream so much, he had messed up a lot of things. And so the younger Cable got rid of the older Cable. But with this brand new series in the Dawn of X and Cable #1, the way that book ended, we were left to believe that old school Cable is back once again. And of course, he is looking for somebody, but we have no idea who he is looking for. But we do know one thing. He is getting very close to finding that person that he has been looking for. Now, we do jump over to Cable number 3. Now, this book right here, it is basically leading us right into the X of Swords event that we are going to cover down the road. But either way, though, we actually pick up with younger Cable killing old school Cable. Now, of course, we know that this had already happened. And the big question is, why are we seeing this again right now? Well, of course, we're seeing this because this is taking place in Cable's mind. He's right now knocked out, which means that he is dreaming. And you have Esme come into his dream and say, first off, what you're doing right now is mess up. Reliving this moment is not good for you. That's bad for your mental health. On top of that, I need you to wake up because right now we are in some kind of trouble. Now, when Cable wakes up, of course, right now, he wakes up to Esme and they are in the North Pole because remember, they were taken hostage by the Space Knights in the last chapter. And now they're in the North Pole, which is kind of crazy. But either way, though, you do have Esme tell Cable that right now the Space Knights are arguing about what to do with the sword because the sword is very powerful. But of course, these Space Knights found out their home world is gone. It's no longer around. And so their goal is to change the Earth into their new home world. And the sword has the ability to change the Earth environment to be more livable for them and also get back their old bodies as well. And so right now it's Cable and Esme saying, we have to stop them before they use the sword to change the Earth completely. Now, of course, this does lead into a battle between Cable and Esme fighting against the Space Knights all over the sword. Because again, Cable really wants a sword, but at the same time, he does want to save the Earth from these guys. And so it does lead into a very interesting battle between these two sides. But Cable and Esme, they are technically just not good enough to stop these Space Knights because these Knights were trained very well. They were prepared for almost anything to come down the road in their lives, especially to teenagers who just want a cool sword. And so either way, you then have Cable say, listen, how about this? I give you guys a time machine because you want your home world back. We want to keep Earth alive. So how about this? I give you a time machine. You go back in time and basically bring back your home world or save your home world before it was destroyed. How about that? And you had a Space Knight say, you have a time machine? So heck yeah, give it to us. Let us save our home world. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, how in the world does Cable have a time machine? Because this Cable has been stuck in the present day for a very long time. He really hasn't time traveled in a very good amount of time in Marvel Comics. And so now the big question is, where in the world is this man going to get a time machine? But then he asks Esme, where did they buried my old body? He means, where did they bury the old 1990s Cable? Where is his body at? Because in his body, there is a time machine. And so you have Esme actually ask Emma Frost to see where in the world the body of the old Cable was buried at. But that is the moment when they get to his gravesite, it has been dug up, meaning that someone has taken the body of old school Cable. And now you're wondering, who in the world would do that? Well, of course, there's only one person, and that person is Deadpool. And this makes sense because Deadpool was literally the best friend of old school Cable. And so, of course, you do have Cable and Esme go see Deadpool. Now, when they do, we do get reminded that Deadpool does not like younger Cable, all because younger Cable killed old school Cable. But here comes the crazy part. Even though younger Cable killed old school Cable, and that would make sense why Deadpool would hate this younger Cable, at the same time, Deadpool had tried to kill Cable multiple times, especially 1 month before younger Cable was actually able to kill old school Cable. And so it's kind of like Deadpool hates younger Cable for the death of his best friend, but at the same time, he always tried to kill his best friend. It's really weird. But either way, you do have younger Cable tell Deadpool they need the body. Where in the world is the body yet? And of course, we kind of find out that Deadpool had kept the body of Cable inside a pool table. Yes, a glass case that's built inside a pool table. So every time you play pool, you're playing over the body of dead old school Cable. That is how messed up Deadpool is. Like, Deadpool is on another type of crazy, man. Like, literally. But either way, you do have younger Cable smash open the case to get the old body out. Well, really not the complete old body, but just the arm of the old body. Because in that arm is something he needs to help the Space Knights go back in time. But before we are able to learn what Cable is going to do with the arm of old school Cable, we have to jump back over to basically the people who had kidnapped the baby. Because remember, there was a baby that was kidnapped. And we do know the baby was kidnapped by the Order of the X, a group of people who worship mutants like their gods. And of course, they kidnapped the baby because the baby is a mutant. Now, here comes the messed up part though. They're planning to do something big with the baby. We have no idea what yet, but we do see them hand over the baby to a guy named Monsignor. And I really hope I said that name correctly. But of course, they're planning to do some kind of ritual with the baby. Now, when we jump into Cable number 4, we actually pick up with Esme telling us the origin of Gladiador, the planet, and the Space Knights as well. Now, she does tell us that the home world the Space Knights come from, Gladiador, it was a great world at first, because it was a world full of science. But of course, politics always play a role. But of course, if you went against the politic ways of that home world, or if you were a petty thief, you were forced to join some kind of scientific program. In that program, your mind, your body, really your mind, was just put inside a body to make you a cyborg. You were a war machine for this program, and you were sent out to different missions. But if you do complete those missions, you were told that you would get your old body back. But of course, that was a lie. When these cyborgs went out there to complete all these different missions, when they came back, they were killed off. And so some of the Space Knights just never came back. But when they did, they come to find out their home world was blown up. Now, of course, to Nathan, he thinks that, listen, there is only 3 Space Knights right now. We can't let them have that time machine. So we can stop them easily now because, again, there is only 3. But of course, that's when you have Esme say, no, there's more than 3. And that is the moment you have a bunch more Space Knights that all were living on Gladiador before it had blew up. And of course, they all came here to use the time machine to go back in time. But luckily for Cable and Esme, that is the moment we come to find out there is no time machine in the arm of Cable. Because you would think that the reason why they went to the dead body of Cable was to get his arm. Because in his arm, there was a time machine. And of course, it makes sense because over the years in Marvel Comics, Cable was a time traveler. But that is the moment when you have Cable open up the old metal arm of Cable, old school Cable, we come to find out it was a nuclear bomb in there instead. And you have younger Cable say, this makes sense. Because when he killed his older self, he realized that his older self did not run away. his older self would always be a couple steps ahead of him. But for some reason, younger Cable was actually able to kill his older version self. And now he knows why. Because older version Cable did not have a time machine to use. All he had left was a nuclear bomb. Because older Cable knew that younger Cable and Esme would need this. And so that, of course, means older Cable, even though he died to basically younger Cable, it was him dying to help younger Cable live. He knew one day younger Cable would need that nuclear bomb. Now you know what happens next, because you do have Cable and Esme tell the Space Knights that they do need a couple more minutes alone to work on the arm. Because again, to the Space Knights, they're about to get a time machine. They have no idea that inside the arm is actually a nuclear bomb. And so it's Cable saying, I have to make sure the bomb still works. If it does, I need to activate it. At the same time, you have Esme plant a flower. Now that flower is, of course, a Krakoan gate, which means that once the bomb goes off, Cable and Esme can sneak away back over to Krakoa by using a gate. And so, of course, you do have Cable hand over the arm. And of course, the Space Knights believe they have a time machine, to only find out they do not have a time machine. Instead, they have a bomb. And so right when they realize what is about to happen, Cable and Esme have already begun the process of walking through the gate. At the same time, Cable was able to get his sword back. They leave and the bomb goes off, killing off the Space Knights, which means that Cable was able to win so easily once again. Now, to go ahead and wrap up this book, we do pick up with Cable going back home. Now, when he does get back home, of course, he is confronted by Cyclops and Jean Grey, which makes sense because, again, they are his parents. But either way, though, it's Cyclops and Jean Grey telling Cable, listen, man, you are part of this family. We do wish that you will tell us more about you or more things you are going to do. But on top of that, don't be afraid to ask for help because we are here to help. And of course, you do have Cable say, yes, I do understand. I will begin the process of asking you guys for help. At the same time, I will be more part of this family. And this is where the book ends. Now, of course, this is going to be the big notice for you guys. We are going to stop covering Dawn of X for a short period of time. And the reason why, because I want to cover Empire next. And the reason why, because in Empire, the X-Men do have some tie-ins to that event. And their books do play a big role for that event, but also X-Osaurus and later books that we're going to cover for the X-Men titles. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.